Hello ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. Time for another Metal Earth kit. Another Batman kit. This time we have the 90s era movie Batmobile. I'm looking forward to this one. This one's kind of neat. It's not my favorite, but it's a close second as far as the ones you've seen on screen, or ones I've seen on screen. I do have some fond memories of this. I originally liked the movies back in the 90s to a point. But at any rate, let's tear this thing open and see, is it as complicated as the first Batmobile I did, or is it going to be a bit simpler? Batmobile. Instructions. And metal sheets. We have two different pieces of paper. The first sheets, we have page 1 with the usual diagram or line drawing, a little section about insertion holes, and tabs, and folds. Our usual little note about needle nose pliers being helpful for assembling, and what I usually call the legend. The blue circles, when you see those in the instructions, they mean to bend the tabs over 90 degrees, and the green triangle means to twist the tabs. And it'll tell you a little bit about that right here. And down at the bottom you have the layout of the two different sheets, so you can see what the parts are. Here we go. And all the part numbers are listed here, and you'll notice some of the parts are colored in. Those parts are duplicate parts. The same color means there's two of the same. One of them will be numbered. 29 is numbered, and then this one is not. It's understood that these are the same part. They're used in more than one place. It's very common with wheels, stuff that's on the left and right that's the same. You move over to page 2 to the assembly flowchart. Start with part 1 and just kind of follow the red arrows across, 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 and for the most part there'll be a number or be an order of the number of parts. Flip it over. We have page 3, and the build continues to page 4. And when you get to these areas that have colored parts, you'll sometimes run into a smaller number because they're duplicate. And once we're done with the first sheet, page 5, 6, 7, and 12. And you're all done. Tools that I use. Pliers. Pliers are very good. Long needle nose pliers are excellent for a great many things. Flat nose pliers are great for certain bends, and it's essential to have some sort of clippers to be able to easily and cleanly remove the parts from the sheets. Tweezers are very helpful. They're very small and easy to manage. They're great for holding on to small parts, great for making small bends, great for twisting and bending some of the tabs. I like to have an assortment of different kinds. I have a fairly normal set of tweezers, a thinner set, and a couple of sets with very pointed ends for getting into very small areas. Round nose or ring pliers are very useful for shaping some of the curved parts. You can just get the metal in between there and just slowly bend it and curve it for all of the odd shaped areas of your kit. There's a number of different things you can use to make these cylinder shaped and round parts. I have a bunch of dowel rods that I've used, a couple of them sharpened for making cone shapes. I've also picked up some step mandrels that have different size round areas, or a very inexpensive drill bit set. This is a set that I got very cheaply that I honestly would never use to actually drill with, but there's a lot of different sizes you can use. A couple of other things I often find useful is a small hobby knife, not for the sake of cutting, but because it's very thin and you can reach in and sometimes pry things apart. Sometimes that is needed, and it's also good for reaching into tight areas and bending over tabs. And then I have a sort of dental pick type tool, which is great for reaching into certain areas and maybe pulling tabs out that have been bent too far, or pushing things in that don't just quite line up, instead of pulling the part apart and making adjustments with pliers. We have the instructions, we have the metal sheets, and we have some tools. Let's get building.
Part 4 has a lot of very thin areas. I held very tightly with the tweezers and I bent over the sides and pushed firmly on the other side of the bend to keep it from warping. On part 6, I bent down all the sides without paying a lot of attention to their being even. Then I pushed the edges against the table to push everything even. I held the center of part 8 to keep it straight, then bent over the sides with my fingers. I'm very glad I have the round nose or ring pliers. They made shaping the curved undersides very easy. I realized that the curved side pieces around the front were turned the wrong way. It took some time and lots of adjustment to get the tabs and slots to line up for part 15. After a break, I took another look at the instructions and realized I had put both parts 3 and 4 on the wrong sides. It's a good idea to bend the tabs so that they point in the same direction towards the next part. It will make lining up the tabs and slots easier. The instructions seem to indicate to face the engraved side towards the outside of the circle, but the picture shows the engraved side as being on the inside of the circle in the hub. Either this is a mistake or I am unclear what they mean by engraved side. It would not be the first time I was confused. All the wheels come together the same, so I did not bother to show every last step over and over. It helps to bend the tab in just a little. It allows the slot to swing and slide right into place. I often bend tabs over with my fingernails. The instructions indicate to twist the rear tabs of the cabin, but to fold over the forward ones. I believe this is a clearance issue. When I put the hood assembly on, I started with the tabs closest to the cab, but that turned out not to work. I suggest attaching the side tabs first, then the tabs near the cab. When attaching parts 39 and 40, there are two tabs that stick out from the body along the back piece that curve down. One tab has two slots it could possibly go through. Make sure to use the bottom tab or bottom slot. The top slot is for the fender that attaches next. It can take a few tries to find the right size drill bit to shape a part. I tried to start a little big and work my way down. I had to push this part against the table to finish bending over one side. With the other parts on, the pliers would not fit to bend it all the way. Sometimes you have to spend a little extra time trying to shape parts. I do not always twist the tabs when the instructions tell me to do so. It depends on the situation, clearances, and how important the tabs seem to be in holding the part together. This video has been edited down. I have not shown all the different attempts, adjustment, or retries of this build. I also clip out parts where I am studying the directions, searching for and clipping parts, and some repetitive steps. It may make it look like this kit came together easier than it did, but there is a lot of bending and adjusting of parts to make things fit. Work slowly, be patient, and take your time. Attaching the two halves is often a rather difficult part of the build, and this was no exception. Putting the top and bottom sections together on this Batmobile was one of the most difficult kits I have built. It took me about 25 minutes to get all of the tabs into their spots. I started with the back and worked forward with all the tabs. I think, in hindsight, it might have been better if I had started with the front middle section. The middle two tabs on the very front of the Batmobile were quite stubborn and difficult to get into place. I think it might have been easier if I started with them. I originally bent down the tabs on the sides of part 54 thinking it would help set it into place, but that did not go so well. I initially twisted two of the tabs holding on part 54 and 55, but after getting it into place, I went back, untwisted them, and folded them over. I noticed that the back of the Batmobile looked crooked. Turned out one of the inner wheel wells, part 30, did not fall into place correctly and was pressing up against some part of the body. I opened the corner back up, fixed the problem before attaching the back piece.
I give you the Batmobile. This one was more difficult than I expected. I didn't look on the website before building it. I rarely ever do, but the difficulty rating for this is actually challenging. I never actually looked because sometimes that makes me nervous. But I didn't expect it to be as difficult as it was. There's a lot of shaping to it. I knew there would be some, but I didn't expect as much as there was. I figured it would be easier than the 60s TV series Batmobile, but it was a lot more to it. Now, one thing good about this one is that the tabs did more to pull everything together than the previous one. But as with any kit, it just took a fair amount of patience and to study and look over the directions and just take your time to make sure everything is coming together well. I did end up making a few mistakes and had to go back and make some corrections, so that caused me to take longer than it normally would have and probably made it seem a little more difficult, and that's my own fault. I also would like to say I really love the detail of this kit. It's more than I expected, especially the bottom The bottom has an incredible amount of detail, and it took a lot of time just to get through the bottom part before I even began shaping the rest of the body. But it's worth it. This looks awesome. I think now that I've built the kits, this one is my favorite. I expected and was looking forward to the 60s TV series more than the rest, because that's an iconic one. I very much enjoy it, but for some reason I like the detail and the way this one comes together even better. As I kind of mentioned in the narration, getting the two halves together is usually the difficult part, and this was absolutely no exception. It was tougher than I thought. It took quite a bit of time to work all the tabs, and possibly two things that made it more difficult was I decided to start at the rear instead of the front, so getting these two little tabs on the nose took a lot of time, whereas if I'd have started with those, probably wouldn't have been as difficult. And the fact that one of the wheel wells, and I didn't notice it until after I'd got it together, did not slide between the metal sheet under this fin and this part. Once I went to put the back on, I noticed that and was able to fix it. But those two things probably made it more difficult. So if this kit looks like it was very difficult, it is challenging. It very much earns the challenging. But I've made enough mistakes in it to make it look a little more difficult than it was. But I make these mistakes so that you don't have to. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Stay tuned for more Batman kits. We've got the Bat Signal and the Batwing coming up, as well as a bunch of other stuff. I'm building a collection and just haven't been able to do things fast enough. But again, thank you for watching, and keep on keeping on.